You're selling the company for $75 million? I gripped my tablet tighter, forcing my face to remain neutral as I served coffee to the executives who thought I was just there to take notes. 5 years of creating their core technology while they patted my head and called me just admin. Now they were cashing out without me. VP Mark leaned over to the potential buyers and whispered something I wasn't meant to hear. Don't worry about her. Sally's just administrative staff. If only they knew what those patent documents in my apartment actually said. I never planned to be the invisible backbone of tech fusion. Back in 2008, when the recession hit and tech companies were laying off developers instead of hiring them, I was grateful just to land a job. My computer science degree from Georgia Tech was still fresh, and the student loans weren't going to pay themselves. We need someone organized, Jake Thompson, the CEO, told me during my interview for the administrative assistant position. Someone who can keep this place from falling apart while we focus on the technical stuff. I needed work, so I smiled and nodded, keeping quiet about my technical skills. I can definitely help with organization and efficiency, I said, figuring it was temporary until the job market improved. The early days at Tech Fusion were different. We were a team of just 5 people crammed into a small office that smelled perpetually of microwave popcorn and coffee. Jake, 2 developers, a sales guy, and me. My desk sat in the corner, where I handled everything from scheduling to office supplies to client communications. 3 months in, an opportunity emerged unexpectedly. The server's down again, Jake announced one morning, pacing the office, and Tim's out sick. We have to push the client demo. While Jake was on the phone apologetically rescheduling, I quietly walked to Tim's workstation. 20 minutes later, I had not only fixed the server issue but optimized the database query that had been causing the slowdowns. What did you do? Jake asked, staring at the performance dashboard. Just cleared a bottleneck in the indexing structure, I replied. It was throttling the connection pool. His eyebrows shot up. You know back-end development? I nodded. Computer science major. I specialized in secure systems architecture. From that day, my role evolved into something unusual. Officially, I remained the administrative assistant, handling schedules, meetings, and office management. Unofficially, I became the technical problem solver, working after hours on critical systems while the real developers got the credit during business hours. We're all in this together, Jake would say during our late-night coding sessions. Once we're stable, everyone gets equity. Everyone who built this place. I believed him. I trusted him. Over 5 years, Tech Fusion grew from 5 to over 50 employees. My salary increased modestly, but nothing close to what developers with my skills commanded elsewhere. Still, I stayed, believing in Jake's promise of future equity and appreciating the creative freedom I had to solve problems. My first major innovation came during a weekend hackathon I attended purely out of interest. I developed a secure authentication protocol that became the foundation of Tech Fusion's flagship product. Jake was ecstatic. This is revolutionary, Sally, he said, reviewing my code. We should patent this with your name on it. That patent, along with dozens of others I'd eventually develop, became the core intellectual property that made Tech Fusion valuable. But as the company expanded and new executives joined, things changed. Mark Davis came aboard as VP of Business Development, bringing a rigid corporate mindset from his years at larger tech firms. Lisa Wright joined as CFO, immediately implementing strict budgets and role definitions. Together, they transformed our scrappy startup culture into something more hierarchical, more traditional. Suddenly, my dual role became awkward. In management meetings, I was there to take notes and arrange refreshments. But after hours, I was still solving the company's most complex technical problems. Sally, coffee for the strategy meeting, please, became Mark's standard greeting, despite knowing I'd developed the security system he was pitching to clients. I accepted this strange duality, telling myself it was temporary, until one Tuesday afternoon in March, when I was reorganizing the meeting schedule due to a visiting potential investor. I stepped into conference room B to check the projector setup and noticed a laptop left open. On screen was a document titled Aquico Merger minus $75M Valuation. I shouldn't have looked, but my name caught my eye in a table listing key personnel value assessment. Sally Winters, administrative, low risk, replaceable, No retention package required. My heart stopped. They were selling the company. And according to that document, I was considered replaceable administrative staff. None of my technical contributions were acknowledged. None of my innovations were attributed to me. The company I had helped build, whose core technologies I had invented, was being sold for $75 million, and I wasn't even considered technical personnel. That night, I couldn't sleep. I stared at my ceiling, replaying years of memories, promises, and contributions, the security protocol that became our core product, the distributed database architecture I designed on a long weekend, the machine learning algorithm that gave us an edge over competitors. All my work, all my creativity, was about to make everyone rich except me. The next morning, I arrived early and adopted a strategy. I would gather information while maintaining absolute normalcy in my behavior. No one could know I was aware of the acquisition plans. "Morning, Sally. Can I get those quarterly reports?" Jake called out as I passed his office. "Already on your desk," I replied with my usual efficiency, hiding the storm brewing inside me. Over the next 2 weeks, I became a secret investigator into my own career. During lunch breaks, I combed through my personal email archive, finding old messages where Jake and other leaders had praised my technical solutions and promised future equity. "Your security protocol is what's making these deals close. We owe you big time." Read one email from Jake, dated 2 years earlier. I dug through my home office, finding notebooks filled with sketches and code that eventually became TechFusion's intellectual property. I had documentation, physical proof that I was the originator of much of the company's valuable technology. Tyler, a junior developer who joined last year, unwittingly became my best source of information. Young and enthusiastic, he didn't yet understand corporate politics. "I'm working on integrating the security protocol for the acquisition team's review," he mentioned casually over coffee. "The one you created. It's pretty much what they're buying us for." "The acquisition team?" I asked innocently. "Oops," he grimaced. "Probably not supposed to talk about that. But yeah, Tech Giant Corporation is doing technical due diligence. Your authentication system is what they really want." That conversation confirmed what I suspected. My work was central to the acquisition. That evening I researched similar cases. I found stories of administrative assistants who'd contributed ideas, of women in tech whose work was attributed to male colleagues, of developers who'd signed away rights without understanding the implications. I was far from alone. The more I discovered, the more my anger grew, but also my determination. I reached out to college classmates, carefully framing questions as hypotheticals. My old roommate Andrea, now a corporate attorney, provided crucial advice. "Intellectual property ownership depends on contracts and patent filings," she explained. "What exactly did you sign when you joined? And were you listed on any patent applications?" I remembered signing standard employment paperwork, but nothing specifically transferring ownership of my inventions beyond normal work product provisions. As for patents, Jake had promised my name would be on them, but I'd never seen the final filings. Digging deeper into public patent records one night sent an electric shock through my system. There they were, 36 patents with my name listed as inventor or co-inventor. Jake had actually put my name on the patents. Not as the sole creator in most cases, but my name was legally there, despite what management now claimed. The next day at work, I overheard something that confirmed the financial impact of my work. Mark was on the phone in his office, door slightly ajar. "The valuation breakdown shows $45 million for the security intellectual property alone," he said to someone. "It's the crown jewel. $45 million for my crown jewel. And according to their personnel risk assessment, I was replaceable and required no retention package." That night, I barely slept again, but for different reasons. I wasn't just hurt anymore. I was calculating, planning. The knowledge that my name was legally on those patents changed everything. I might have actual leverage. Carefully, I downloaded financial documents I had legitimate access to as part of my administrative duties. I took photos of my personal notebooks showing dated development work. I forwarded key emails to my personal account where I had been praised for technical innovations. I was building a case, piece by piece, evidence that I wasn't just admin. I was TechFusion's secret technical foundation. The betrayal cut deep. These weren't just colleagues, they had been friends, or so I thought. We had built something together. Now they were erasing me from the story, writing me out of the ending where everyone gets rich. I thought about confronting Jake directly, but something held me back. Timing would be everything. Moving too soon would give them time to counter. Too late, and the deal would close without me. So I watched, and I waited, all while collecting evidence of my contributions. The acquisition, I learned, was scheduled to culminate in a final meeting with tech giant representatives in 3 weeks. I circled the date on my calendar, April 15th. Tax day. How appropriate. After 2 weeks of information gathering, I decided it was time for a controlled confrontation. Not a full reveal of what I knew, but a test of Jake's integrity. I caught him alone in the office kitchen one evening, making a rare cup of coffee instead of asking me to do it. "Jake, do you have a minute?" I asked, keeping my voice casual. "Sure, what's up?" He seemed distracted, checking his phone. "I've been thinking about my future here. I've contributed a lot on the technical side over the years, and I was wondering if there's been any movement on the equity discussions we had." His expression shifted subtly. "Sally, you've been compensated fairly for your administrative role. I know you've helped with some technical things here and there, but that was all within your normal job duties." "Here and there? Normal job duties?" I bit the inside of my cheek to stay calm. "I designed the core security protocol," I reminded him, "and the distributed database architecture. Those weren't administrative tasks." Jake's face hardened. "Those were team efforts that you participated in. Everyone contributes ideas." Before I could respond, Mark appeared in the doorway. "Jake, we need you for the investor call." Jake seemed relieved by the interruption. "We'll talk about this another time, Sally." But we never did. The next day, I was removed from several technical email lists. My access to development servers was revoked for security streamlining, according to IT. I decided to try a more formal approach, sending a carefully worded email to both Jake and Mark. I wanted to follow up on our conversation regarding my technical contributions to TechFusion's core products. As the originator of the security authentication protocol and key architectural components, I'd like to discuss appropriate recognition and compensation for these contributions, especially as the company enters its next phase. The response came from HR, not Jake. "Thank you for your message. All employees are valued at TechFusion. Compensation is determined by formal role and responsibility assignments. If you wish to be considered for a technical position, you may apply through the standard internal hiring process. We ask that all staff respect organizational hierarchy and communication protocols." The message was clear. Stay in your lane. Know your place. That afternoon, I overheard Mark giving a tour to potential buyers from Tech Giant. As they passed my desk, one visitor asked about my role. "She's just administrative staff," Mark said dismissively. "Handles scheduling, meeting coordination, that sort of thing." I kept my eyes fixed on my screen, feeling a complicated mix of rage and satisfaction. They truly had no idea what was coming. That evening, I was supposed to meet my friend Allison for dinner, but I canceled to research my options further. This was too important. "Everything okay?" she texted. "Just work stuff," I replied. "Might need a good lawyer soon." "Sounds serious. Let me know if you need anything." I spent the night making calls instead, reaching out to an old classmate who had become a patent attorney. James listened to my situation and agreed to meet the following day. "Bring every document you have," he advised. This could be significant. The next morning, an email from HR appeared in my inbox with the subject line, "Office reassignment effective immediately." The message explained that due to organizational restructuring, I was being transferred to the company's satellite office across town, effective the following Monday. The satellite office housed only the marketing team and some sales staff. No technical personnel, no executives. They were removing me from headquarters during the most critical phase of the acquisition. I felt a cold fury building inside me. The transfer wasn't just insulting, it was strategic. They wanted me away from the acquisition team, away from any chance of revealing my true role. They were scared. Good. They should be. I replied to the email accepting the transfer, playing the compliant administrative assistant one last time. Let them think they'd neutralized the threat. Let them think I was clueless, powerless. I forwarded the transfer notice to James. They're trying to get me out of the main office before the acquisition meetings, I explained. His response was immediate. This strengthens our position. It shows consciousness of guilt. That evening, as I boxed up my desk belongings, Jake stopped by. He seemed uncomfortable. The satellite office transfer, it's nothing personal, Sally. Just restructuring. I nodded pleasantly. Of course. I understand. You've been great, he added, not meeting my eyes. Really valuable to the team. Thank you, I replied. I've certainly tried to contribute wherever I could. He seemed relieved by my apparent acceptance, missing the double meaning in my words. I left the office that Friday with my small box of personal items, smiling and waving goodbye to colleagues who thought I was just the nice admin getting shuffled around in corporate chess. Little did they know I was about to change the game entirely. Monday morning, I called in sick to my first day at the satellite office. Instead, I met with Grace Thompson, a patent attorney James had connected me with who specialized in inventor rights cases. We met at a coffee shop 20 miles from TechFusion's offices. Grace was sharp, direct, and immediately saw the significance of my situation. I've reviewed the patent documents you sent, she said, sliding a folder across the table. Your name is listed as inventor or co-inventor on 36 separate patents filed by TechFusion. So, it's true, I said, feeling a strange mix of vindication and disbelief. I saw my name in the public records, but I wasn't entirely sure what it meant legally. It means a great deal, Grace replied, particularly since your employment contract doesn't contain the specific IP assignment clauses that would automatically transfer all rights to the company regardless of your contribution level. She explained that while the company owned the patents since they were developed during my employment, my status as named inventor gave me certain rights and leverage that couldn't be easily dismissed. Did you ever wonder why your name was included? She asked. Most companies try to limit the number of named inventors. I hadn't considered this. No, I just assumed Jake followed through on his promise to credit me. Grace made some calls from the coffee shop, speaking in legal terminology that was beyond my understanding. After her third call, she looked up with a slight smile. I think I've found our ally. A patent clerk named Jordan who processed most of TechFusion's early filings. He no longer works at the patent office, but he remembers your application specifically. She dialed again, putting the call on speaker. Miss Thompson? A male voice answered. I checked my old notes like you asked. Those TechFusion security protocol patents, there was definitely pressure to remove the administrative assistant's name as inventor. My breath caught. Can you elaborate? Grace asked. The attorney filing the applications initially submitted them with multiple inventors, including Sally Winters. Then, there was an amended filing request attempting to remove her name. I refused to process it without proper documentation showing she had voluntarily relinquished inventor status. And did they provide that documentation? Grace asked. No. They eventually withdrew the amendment request and proceeded with the original filing, listing her as inventor. I felt dizzy. They had actively tried to remove my name, but this Jordan person had stopped them. After the call, Grace explained the significance. They knew your contributions were substantial enough to legally require listing you as inventor. They tried to circumvent that requirement and couldn't. So what does this mean for the acquisition? I asked. It means you have legitimate standing to raise concerns about being excluded from the process. Your role as inventor on patents valued at tens of millions makes you a material stakeholder in the transaction. Over the next few days, while officially recovering from illness according to my sick leave request, I built additional alliances. Patricia had been TechFusion's office manager since before I joined. At 62, she'd seen enough corporate politics to become quietly cynical. We met for lunch at her favorite diner. I'm not surprised, she said after I explained the situation. I've been watching them push people aside for years. Anyone who isn't in their little boys' club. I need to know what's in the acquisition documents, I told her. The real ones, not the summaries they're showing everyone. Patricia didn't hesitate. I make copies of everything that crosses Jake's desk. force of habit from when he used to lose important papers. Come by my place tonight. That evening, in Patricia's modest apartment surrounded by cat figurines, I reviewed acquisition documents that revealed the full extent of the betrayal. The documents explicitly valued the authentication protocol patents, my patents, at $45 million, and there was a special bonus structure for key technical personnel that excluded me entirely. There's something else, Patricia said, handing me a file. HR complaints. 3 female developers who left over the past 2 years. All claimed their work was attributed to male colleagues. All settled with non-disclosure agreements. This wasn't just about me. It was a pattern. Next, I reconnected with David, a former Tech Fusion developer who'd left to start his own company. We met at a park, away from prying eyes. I always wondered why you stayed in that admin role, he said. Everyone who worked closely with the code knew you were the real genius behind our best stuff. I believed in Jake's promises, I said. Stupid, I guess. David shook his head. Not stupid, loyal. There's a difference. He paused. So what's your play here? I outlined my emerging plan. The final acquisition meeting is next week. All the tech giant executives will be there, along with their legal team. That's when I make my move. Risky, he observed. They could try to discredit you, paint you as a disgruntled employee making false claims. That's why I need irrefutable evidence and the element of surprise. They can't prepare counters to arguments they don't see coming. David nodded slowly. I have contacts at Tech Giant. I can find out who's leading their due diligence team. That information proved invaluable. By the end of the week, I knew that Amanda Fletcher, Tech Giant's VP of Technology Acquisition, was personally overseeing the deal. Her background was technical. She'd been a developer before moving into leadership. She would understand the significance of my contributions. The final piece came when Jordan, the former patent clerk, agreed to meet with me directly. We met at a bookstore cafe where he immediately recognized me from photos included with the patent applications. I remember your case clearly, he said. It was unusual to see so many critical patents with a woman's name on them, especially someone classified as administrative staff in the company documentation. Why did you fight to keep my name on them? I asked. He looked surprised by the question. Because it was legally required, and because it was the right thing to do. Inventors deserve credit for their work, regardless of their job title. I almost cried. This stranger had done more to protect my interests than people I'd worked alongside for years. They tried again with later filings, Jordan added, but I'd flagged your name in the system. Any attempt to file similar technologies without listing you triggered a review. Armed with this information and mountains of evidence, I met with Grace one final time before the acquisition meeting. Are you ready for this? She asked. Once you step into that room and speak up, there's no going back. I thought about the years of being overlooked, of creating value only to be excluded from its rewards, of watching less qualified men take credit for my innovations. I'm beyond ready, I said. They thought they could sell my work without me even knowing. Now they'll learn exactly who they've been underestimating. The night before the big meeting, I barely slept. Not from anxiety, but from a simmering determination. For years, I'd hidden my light, accepting less than I deserved. Tomorrow, I would finally stand in my full power. I laid out my outfit, not the casual attire of an administrative assistant, but the polished look of an executive. The transformation had already begun in my mind. Tomorrow, it would become reality for everyone else too. The morning of April 15th arrived bright and clear. I dressed carefully in a tailored navy suit I'd purchased, specifically for this day, a far cry from my usual business casual attire. Today, I wasn't dressing for my assigned role. I was dressing for the role I'd earned. I arrived at Tech Fusion headquarters instead of the satellite office where I was supposedly now based. At the reception desk, Tanya looked surprised. Sally, aren't you at Westside now? Just helping with the big meeting, I said smoothly. Jake asked me to handle the arrangements. This wasn't entirely a lie. Jake had indeed texted me the previous day. Can you come to HQ to help with meeting setup tomorrow? Nobody does it like you. Even now, they saw me as the helpful assistant. That perception was about to change dramatically. I entered the main conference room early and meticulously prepared everything. water pitchers, notepads, presentation materials. I tested the projector, adjusted the blinds for optimal viewing, and arranged the catering exactly as specified. Every detail perfect, as always. Executives from both companies began arriving at 9:30. I greeted them professionally, showing tech giant representatives to their seats while nodding politely to Jake, Mark, and the rest of Tech Fusion leadership. Jake looked relieved to see me. "Thanks for coming in, Sally. I knew we could count on you." If he noticed my more formal attire, he didn't comment. Mark was less pleasant. "I thought you were transferred to Westside," he said quietly as he passed. "Just helping with the meeting," I replied, as requested. His eyes narrowed slightly, but he said nothing more. By 10 o'clock, everyone was seated. Tech Fusion executives and board members on one side, tech giant leadership and their legal team on the other. I positioned myself discreetly in the corner with my tablet, ostensibly taking notes like the good administrative assistant they all assumed I was. Jake opened the meeting with practiced charm. "We're excited to move forward with this partnership. Tech Fusion's industry-leading security protocols, combined with tech giant's market reach, will create extraordinary value." My security protocols, my value. Amanda Fletcher, tech giant's VP of Technology Acquisition, responded with equal polish. "We've been impressed with what we've seen so far. Today is about finalizing our technical due diligence and confirming the integration pathway." The meeting progressed through standard acquisition discussions, financial projections, integration timelines, staffing plans. I took notes diligently, waiting for my moment. It came when Amanda directed the conversation toward intellectual property. "Let's discuss the patent portfolio, particularly the security authentication protocol that forms the core of your valuation," she said. "Our technical team has been extremely impressed with its elegance." Jake beamed. "We're proud of what our development team accomplished there." Amanda nodded to her legal counsel, who pulled up a slide on his laptop. "We have reviewed all patent documentation thoroughly, as required for the due diligence process." This was it. I took a deep breath. "One question," Amanda continued. "We'd like to speak directly with the primary inventor listed on these core patents." She glanced at her notes. "Sally Winters? I don't believe we've been introduced to her yet." The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Jake's smile froze. Mark shifted uncomfortably. "Sally is administrative staff who helps with organization," Mark said quickly. "The patents list multiple contributors. Our technical team can address any questions about the technology." Amanda frowned slightly, looking confused. Her legal counsel leaned forward, placing a document on the table. "According to patent office records, Sally Winters is listed as primary inventor on 23 patents and co-inventor on 13 others. These comprise the core intellectual property we're acquiring." He looked around the room. "Can you clarify her role?" Jake cleared his throat. "Sally has been with us from early days. She's contributed ideas like many team members, but the development work was done by our technical staff." I chose that moment to stand up. The motion drew every eye in the room. "Actually," I said calmly, "I designed and implemented the core security protocol, the distributed database architecture, and the machine learning algorithm that powers the anomaly detection system." Shocked silence fell over the room. Jake's face drained of color. Amanda Fletcher turned to face me fully. "You're Sally Winters?" "I am." I moved from my corner position to an empty chair at the table. "And you're administrative staff?" she asked, confusion evident. "That's my official title," I confirmed. "Though as the patent records correctly show, I'm also the inventor of most of the technology you're here to acquire." The tech giant legal counsel rapidly sorted through documents. "These patents collectively account for approximately 60% of the proposed acquisition value." 60%, I repeated, letting the number hang in the air. "Of $75 million. Mark stood abruptly. "This is inappropriate. Sally, you should leave. We can discuss any concerns you have separately." Amanda Fletcher raised her hand. "I'd prefer Miss Winters stay, actually. As the primary inventor on the technology we're acquiring, her input seems rather essential." Jake attempted damage control. "Sally has been a valuable team member, but these patents were developed as works for hire under her employment contract. The company owns all intellectual property rights. That's partially correct, I acknowledged. The company does own the patents. However, my status as named inventor gives me certain rights that can't be simply ignored. One of Tech Giant's attorneys looked directly at Jake. Were we aware that the primary technical creator of your core products wasn't included in this acquisition discussion? Before Jake could answer, I added. Or that I was transferred to a satellite office last week, coincidentally right before this meeting? Amanda Fletcher's expression hardened. I think we need to pause and reassess some assumptions here. She turned to me. Miss Winters, would you be willing to discuss the technical architecture directly with our team? I'd be happy to, I replied. The Tech Fusion executives exchanged panicked glances. Their carefully choreographed acquisition dance was falling apart. The Tech Giant legal counsel reviewed more documents, then looked up with a startled expression. You're selling a firm she basically owns? At least intellectually speaking? That's an overstatement, Jake protested weakly. Is it? Amanda challenged. Your company valuation is heavily based on patents listing Miss Winters as inventor. Patents you apparently tried to remove her name from, according to our research. That revelation caused audible gasps around the table. The Tech Fusion board members looked stunned, clearly hearing this for the first time. This is a serious issue, Amanda continued. We can't proceed with an acquisition where the primary technical creator has been excluded from the process and potentially misled about her stake. Mark attempted one last desperate maneuver. Sally signed an employment agreement. Everything she developed belongs to Tech Fusion. Ownership isn't the only issue here, Amanda replied coolly. Due diligence requires us to assess the ongoing viability of the technology. If its creator has been marginalized, she let the implication hang in the air. Without me, future development might be compromised. The room erupted into murmured conversations. The Tech Fusion board members huddled together, shooting concerned glances my way. The Tech Giant team conferred with their legal counsel. I remained calm, watching 5 years of underestimation transform into the sudden, panicked realization of my true value. Amanda Fletcher broke away from her team and approached me directly. Miss Winters, would you join us for a private conversation? Mark started to object, but Amanda cut him off. We need to speak with the innovator behind the core security protocol. That's non-negotiable at this point. As I stood to follow Amanda from the room, I caught Jake's eye. His expression wasn't angry as I might have expected. Instead, he looked defeated, perhaps even ashamed. Good, I thought. He should be. Amanda Fletcher led me to a smaller conference room, where 3 other Tech Giant executives waited. As soon as the door closed, the atmosphere changed completely. That was quite a revelation, Amanda said, gesturing for me to sit. We had no idea the primary creator of the technology we're acquiring wasn't even at the table. Tech Fusion has a particular view of organizational hierarchy, I replied diplomatically. A man I recognized as Tech Giant's chief technology officer leaned forward. Let's cut to the chase. The authentication protocol is brilliant work. Why have you stayed in an administrative role while creating technology worth millions? It was a fair question. I joined during the recession when technical jobs were scarce. Once I started developing solutions, I was promised equity and proper recognition when the time was right. That time never seemed to arrive. Amanda nodded thoughtfully. And now they're selling the company without honoring those promises. Exactly. Back in the main conference room, chaos had erupted. Through the glass walls, I could see Jake and Mark in heated discussion with board members. Their carefully orchestrated acquisition was unraveling. The Tech Giant team asked detailed technical questions about my innovations. I answered each one with the depth and precision that only the true creator could provide. Their respect became increasingly evident. You architected all of this yourself? The CTO asked after I explained the security protocol's encryption methodology. I did. Nights and weekends, mostly. He shook his head in disbelief. And they kept you filing paperwork? Before I could answer, there was a knock at the door. Jake entered alone, his confident demeanor noticeably diminished. Sally, can we talk privately? Anything you need to say can be said here, I replied calmly. He hesitated, then sighed. The board wants to discuss revised terms that would properly recognize your contributions. I'm listening. A significant equity grant, a proper technical title, a seat at the leadership table for the integration. And Mark? I asked. Jake's expression tightened. That's an internal matter. It's relevant to whether Tech Fusion is serious about addressing its cultural issues, I countered. Before Jake could respond, Amanda interjected. Actually, we'd like to propose an alternative arrangement. She looked directly at me, not Jake. We want you as CTO leading the integration and future development. Jake's face fell. You're trying to hire her directly? We're recognizing where the real value in this acquisition lies, Amanda replied. The technology and the mind behind it. My heart raced. From administrative assistant to chief technology officer in one meeting, the vindication was overwhelming. You can't do that, Jake protested. Her employment agreement has non-compete clauses. Actually, I said, those clauses are limited to voluntary departure. They don't apply in an acquisition scenario where my role is eliminated or substantially changed, like being transferred to a satellite office right before an acquisition. Jake stared at me, finally understanding that I'd been several steps ahead all along. The meeting adjourned with both companies needing to reassess. Jake left looking defeated, while Amanda handed me her business card with her personal cell number written on the back. Call me directly, she said. Regardless of how this particular deal proceeds, we want to talk. Grace, my attorney, arrived 30 minutes later. Tech Fusion's board had requested an emergency session and wanted me present with legal representation. They're panicking, Grace observed as we walked to the boardroom. The acquisition is falling apart and they know you're the key to salvaging it. The boardroom was tense when we entered. Board members and executives sat stiffly around the table. Jake looked exhausted. Mark was notably absent. William Foster, the board chair, addressed me directly. Miss Winters, this situation is unfortunate. We're prepared to offer significant compensation to recognize your contributions. Grace spoke before I could. My client's contributions constitute the majority of the company's intellectual value. Significant would need to be precisely quantified. 20% of the acquisition proceeds, he offered. Grace didn't blink. 60% of the valuation is directly tied to my client's innovations. We'll need at least 40% to reflect both the intellectual property and the years of undercompensation. The negotiation continued for hours. By evening, we had reached key terms. 35% of acquisition proceeds, back pay for years of technical work performed while classified as administrative, and a leadership position in the combined entity. And Mark Davis? I asked as the agreement was being finalized. William Foster's expression hardened. Mr. Davis has been placed on administrative leave pending review of his management practices. Justice was finally being served. Later that night, alone in my apartment, I felt a complex mix of emotions: vindication, relief, lingering anger, and something unexpected: sadness. Despite everything, Tech Fusion had been my home for 5 years. I had believed in Jake and the vision we were building together. My phone buzzed with a text from Amanda Fletcher. Offer stands regardless of acquisition outcome. We need technical leaders who can both innovate and persevere. I smiled. Options felt good after years of feeling trapped. The following morning, Jake was waiting by my car when I arrived at the office. I owe you an apology, he said, looking genuinely remorseful. A bigger one than I can probably ever give. I studied his face, searching for the friend and mentor I'd once believed in. Why, Jake? I trusted you. I built technology that made this company valuable. Why did you sideline me? He sighed heavily. It started small. You were so good at both the administrative and technical work. Then Mark joined and pushed for traditional hierarchies. It was easier to go along than fight. He met my eyes. That's not an excuse. It's a failure of leadership. My failure. Yes, I agreed. It was. For what it's worth, I did put your name on all the patents. I knew someday you'd need that recognition. A small act of integrity amid larger betrayals. That's the only reason we're having this conversation instead of a lawsuit, I told him. He nodded. The board wants to proceed with the acquisition under the revised terms. You'll have the recognition, compensation, and position you've earned. and I'll be stepping back after the transition. Stepping back? The board has made it clear my judgment is in question. They're right. He looked up at the Tech Fusion building. This company needs new leadership that values everyone's contributions, regardless of title or background. His accountability was unexpected, and it softened something inside me. Not enough for complete forgiveness, but enough to move forward constructively. I want changes beyond just my situation, I said. A review of all compensation for potential gender disparities, recognition processes for technical contributions regardless of job title, and settlements for the developers who left after having their work attributed to others. The board has already approved those measures, Jake said. Your advocacy has opened a lot of eyes, including mine. As we walked into the building together, employees stared. Word had spread quickly about the dramatic acquisition meeting. I held my head high, no longer the invisible admin, but a recognized technical leader commanding both respect and compensation appropriate to my contributions. The power had shifted, and I was just getting started. 3 months after that pivotal acquisition meeting, Tech Fusion officially became part of Tech Giant Corporation. The journey to that point had been intense, with countless meetings, negotiations, and significant organizational changes. I walked into the newly rebranded headquarters on Integration Day, wearing a tailored suit, and the confidence of someone who finally occupied her rightful place. My new business cards had just arrived. Sally Winters, Chief Technical Integration Officer. The acquisition had proceeded under dramatically revised terms. I had received 35% of the proceeds, $26 million, for my years of undervalued contributions. More importantly, I had a leadership position that recognized my technical abilities and a platform to ensure others wouldn't experience what I had. Jake approached as I was settling into my new office. A real office, not a desk in the open area. Big day, he said, hovering in the doorway. Very big, I agreed. The transition team needs the security protocol documentation for the integration kickoff, he said. You're the only one who truly understands all of it. I nodded. I'll bring it to the meeting. He hesitated. I'm officially done after today. Advisory period complete. I know. The board had determined Jake would transition out completely once the acquisition closed. His leadership failure had consequences, as it should. I want to say something before I go, he continued. What happened to you here? It was wrong. I was wrong. I put down the files I'd been organizing. Yes, you were. I let traditional hierarchies and assumptions cloud my judgment. I valued titles over contributions. I listened to people like Mark instead of my own observations. He met my eyes directly. I failed as a leader and as a friend. His acknowledgement mattered, though it couldn't erase the years of being overlooked and undervalued. The company succeeded because of you, not despite you, he added. That will be my last official statement to the board today. After he left, I sat quietly, absorbing the culmination of events that had transformed my professional life. The journey from administrative assistant to executive had been sudden in its final act, but built on years of unrecognized excellence. Later that morning, I led my first official meeting as a technical executive. Familiar faces from Tech Fusion, mixed with new colleagues from Tech Giant around the conference room table, the same room where I'd upended the acquisition 3 months earlier. As we integrate our security protocols into the broader Tech Giant infrastructure, I explained, displaying the architecture diagrams I'd created years ago, we need to maintain the core encryption methodology while expanding its implementation scope. People took notes attentively. No one asked me to fetch coffee. Amanda Fletcher, now my direct supervisor, nodded approvingly as I walked through the technical strategy. After the meeting, she pulled me aside. The team is impressed, she said. You're as brilliant as your patents suggested. Thank you for taking a chance on me, I replied. It wasn't a chance. It was recognition of demonstrated excellence. She smiled. Though I admit, watching you stand up in that acquisition meeting was one of the most dramatic moments of my career. I laughed. Mine too. The transition wasn't without challenges. Some former colleagues struggled to adjust to my new authority. Others were embarrassed by their past treatment of me. But most adapted quickly, particularly after seeing my technical leadership in action. Mark never returned from administrative leave. An investigation into his management practices revealed a pattern of taking credit for others' work and marginalizing contributors who didn't fit his narrow view of what a real technologist looked like. The company severed ties completely, with a confidential settlement that prohibited him from disparaging the company or me. 1 month after the integration, I received an unexpected email from Tyler, the junior developer who had unknowingly been my information source. "I just realized something that's been bothering me," he wrote. "Last year, when I was struggling with the database implementation, you suggested the indexed partitioning approach that solved our scaling problems. I presented it as my solution, and you never said anything. That wasn't right, and I'm sorry." His recognition meant almost as much as the acquisition proceeds. The culture was already changing. Patricia, the office manager who had helped me gather evidence, stopped by my office with a small gift, a framed copy of my first patent. "I knew this day would come eventually," she said, placing it on my desk. "Some people just can't be kept down forever." 6 months into the integration, I implemented a new company policy, the Technical Contribution Recognition Program. It ensured that anyone, regardless of job title or department, could submit technical innovations and receive appropriate credit, compensation, and career advancement opportunities. "Innovation doesn't check job titles," I explained at the company all-hands meeting where we announced the program. "Great ideas can come from anywhere in the organization." I thought of all the administrative assistants, customer service representatives, and others in non-technical roles whose insights might otherwise be overlooked. Never again, I vowed. The program's first submission came from Rachel in accounting, who had developed an algorithm to detect unusual patterns in financial transactions. Under the old regime, her idea might have been dismissed or appropriated. Under the new policy, she received a bonus and part-time assignment to the security team to implement her solution. On the anniversary of the acquisition, Amanda invited me to dinner to celebrate a successful first year. "Our security division revenue has doubled," she noted. "Your integration approach worked even better than projected." "Having my innovations recognized has been incredibly motivating," I admitted. "I've had ideas percolating for years that I never fully developed because what was the point? And now? Now I'm filing new patents every month, with my name proudly listed as inventor." Amanda raised her glass. "To innovation without limitations." Later that week, I received a LinkedIn message from Jake. He had started a small consulting practice focusing on inclusive innovation structures for startups. "Your story changed how I understand business leadership," he wrote. "I'm trying to help other companies avoid making the same mistakes. Would you be willing to speak to my client group about your experience?" I agreed. Not for Jake, but for all the other overlooked innovators who might benefit from organizational leaders hearing my story. The presentation to Jake's clients became a catalyst. Other companies began reaching out, asking me to advise on recognition structures and inclusive innovation practices. What had happened to me, it turned out, wasn't rare, but my successful fight for recognition was. I established a mentoring program specifically for women in technical roles, particularly those in non-traditional career paths like mine had been. My first mentee was a customer service representative who had been coding automation tools on her own time exactly as I had once done. "Nobody takes me seriously because my title doesn't say engineer," she confided during our first meeting. "I understand completely," I told her. "Let's change that." 2 years after the acquisition that changed everything, I sat in my office reviewing a new patent application. The invention was a collaborative effort between 3 departments, including a significant contribution from an administrative assistant with a hidden talent for algorithm design. I smiled as I approved the application with all contributors properly listed, regardless of their job titles. The system was working as designed. People were being valued for their actual contributions, not their labels. My assistant, yes, I now had an assistant of my own, knocked on my door. "The board meeting is starting in 5 minutes, she reminded me. I gathered my materials and headed to the boardroom, pausing briefly to straighten the frame holding my first patent on the wall. From administrative assistant to board member, from overlooked to essential, from undervalued to appropriately compensated. The journey had been painful but necessary, not just for me but for everyone who would come after me. The systems that had kept me invisible were being dismantled, brick by brick, replaced with structures that recognized contribution over position, innovation over title. As I took my seat at the boardroom table not to serve coffee but to guide technical strategy, I reflected on the most important lesson from my experience. Your value isn't determined by how others see you, but by knowing your own worth and refusing to accept anything less than the recognition you've earned. The underestimation of my contributions had been TechFusion's $75 million mistake, and my reclamation of my rightful place had become my greatest innovation of all. Have you ever been underestimated in your career or had your contributions overlooked? I'd love to hear your stories and how you advocated for yourself. Please leave a comment below sharing your experience. If this story resonated with you, please like this video, subscribe to my channel for more authentic workplace stories, and share with someone who might need to hear this message of standing up for your worth. Thank you for listening to my journey from invisible admin to recognized innovator. Remember, your value isn't determined by your title, it's determined by your impact.